AG claiming the DPP had no legal authority to trigger extradition proceedings since the process entails international relations that fall within the constitutional remit of the executive. And he wanted the Supreme Court to uphold a March 2nd, 2018 Court of Appeal decision that invalidated the extradition process instituted by the DPP in 2011. And it was held that the process was initiated by an unauthorized person. On the other hand, the DPP wanted the court to approve the proceedings he initiated in July 2011. The DPP contended that since the proceedings are criminal in nature, the AG has no role to play. And we know further under Article 156 of the Constitution, the AG has no powers in relation to criminal proceedings that include extradition proceedings. So this is where we are stuck, and that is the only effort that the government of Kenya has made as far as making this process go on. UK, on the other hand, have been very frustrated because now we cannot avail these people through the extradition process. That is Chris Okemo and Samuel Gashuru at the end of the day. I want to ask you, Bwana Senator, are you reading more to this particular case than meets the eye?
Yes, Dimal, not only this case, but if you followed all the similar cases where money has been stolen from this country and stashed abroad. You look at, you remember Anglo leasing, how it ended. You remember the investigations on Goldenberg. You remember the chicken gate recently on the Electoral Commission thing. Yeah. So I think it's all the same. Our criminal justice system is, is more or less irreparably dysfunctional, or not because for lack of knowledge or whatever, but because of graft, as my colleagues have mentioned. And but more importantly, I think from what you have just read, it's very clear that who has the power to prosecute this matter. But again, if you want to stop it, then you find institutions coming in to try and muddy the waters and make it difficult for that exercise to go on. And it's happened in many similar cases regarding corruption. But I think if you look at the bigger picture, however, I look at the lack of political will, really, to handle these cases. Where there is political will, I can tell you for sure, at the top, these cases will be handled immediately. But where there isn't, for one reason or the other, there is political patronage or whatever it is, but for political expediency or whatever it is, these cases will not go anywhere. They will continue to go around, and then on top of that, the graft. So I think, unfortunately, that is the situation, and I think every effort will be made to try and not to get this extradition to go through, because it will set a precedent that everyone else fears. All the people that McPhee mentioned fear that precedent, that if today these two people are extradited to UK, tomorrow then, with what you have read about, that all those, in those offshore accounts, that's where all the Kenyans with money have their money, and that's where all the money, or most of the money that is taken away from or stolen from public entities are hidden. So then you can imagine the consequences. So nobody wants this precedent to be set, and so everything will be done to try and throw a spanner in the works to make it difficult for the criminal justice system to deliver that judgment.
Well, we all know where Kenya Power is right now, especially with independent powers producers. At the end of the day, we know how the country also is suffering in terms of power tariffs, exorbitant, energy prices that we do pay as Kenyans at the end of the day. If we have these cases, and we know these eye-popping figures that are coming, this is 450 million is just a slice of what is salted away in those banks at the end of the day. Why do we have parastatals which are suffering, and Kenyans at the end of the day are paying exorbitantly for their power tariffs, and we have people who are free at the end of the day? If Kenya Power was actually plundered, then they should be paying the price. Why should we be paying this particular price right now as Kenyans?
If Kenya Power for a long time, particularly from 90s or even before 90s, is the biggest cash cow in this country. If you are in government, that was where the money was. And today, it's still, in terms of contracts to the politically connected, and it's still one of the most important sources of cash for them. So I think every effort will be made to try and not to allow privatization of institutions like this, because it's to their benefit. Kenya Pipeline, Kenya Power, all these liquid institutions where there's a lot of revenue that comes in. And so I think our regulators are letting us down. I mean, we have independent regulatory authorities that should really be on top of the pricing of energy. And that should look at the interest of the nation and not look at the interest of individuals or shareholders or others. Because what we have often seen in Kenya Power is a situation where we literally finance every aspect of that entity. Even when there is a forex difference, we pay for the forex. It doesn't happen in any other business in this world, where you have to pay for everything to shield that institution from any loss, and yet they still make losses. And when they made losses last year, the government had to go out of its way to even bail them out. But even with all that, we are being told that we have to pay more tariff. And now they're asking for more deposits. And so we are paying for corruption, basically, because they are vested interests in Kenya Power. That's the bottom line. There are people, once I was told by a former senior MD of that company that in 4 or 5 of the most critical tenders for that institution, it belongs to the big guys. It didn't say who, but in things like transformers, which is a major challenge you've seen, cables, conductors, all those critical ones where there is money, and it's been there from 80s up to now. It's the same. It's for individuals up there in the power structure, and you can't do anything about it. And this is where I remember when these things were happening, this late 80s and 90s. It was a time when entrepreneurs were going around with LPOs from various state corporations in UK, and they're the ones, they're given an open LPO, if you remember the Somalia case and so forth. So I think it's unfortunate, but these things we have to, as Kenyans, we have to pay the price of bad governance. I keep coming back to that. It's all about leadership and governance. Yeah.
All right. Aren't we making also ourselves to people really wonder what sort of a country we are, where they are going to push for the prosecution of these individuals to the logical conclusion, and here we are just sitting on our laurels. They are free, at the end of the day. They have all this eye-popping figure that we're talking about in New Jersey. And Chicken Gate, you mentioned. We saw what happened with Chicken Gate. All those people were arraigned, and they were prosecuted and were jailed at the end of the day. Here we were struggling with IBC or the chicken scandal. At the end of the day, up to today, no one has actually, no one is thrown in the slumbers. We're here now talking about New Jersey. We're talking about Sam Gishoro. For the last 10 good years, no political will is being actually seen in this particular case. What sort of a country then are we? What do they think? Are we just making monkeys out of ourselves in the image of the international community?
Well, you see, we've got to really think about things very. It's so easy for Kenyans, and we do this all the time. We blame everyone else instead of really looking critically at ourselves. We're talking about, for example, in the Standard last week, there was an article which pointed out that Kenya Ports Authority had now increased their charges by 20%.
Yes.
I'm talking to a past student. I don't actually go into supermarkets myself that much, but she is saying that a certain amount of oil that she used to buy for 1,300 shillings is now 3,300 shillings. Kenya Airways gave us its interim report a couple of days ago in the Standard and also in the Nation. It's now, if you look at shareholders' funds, they're negative by 84 billion shillings. Now, the position here, is that Kenya Airways can't compete with Emirates, Qatar, etc., because it's got to buy its fuel at a much higher cost than what Qatar, Emirates, etc. will pay Etihad. So You see, we've got to understand that everything that we do in Kenya has a knock-on effect. The biggest sugar company in Kenya used to produce 60% of the sugar that we actually consumed in Kenya was destroyed by a small group of people. And, you know, Yida Kimoli, who's actually from Kakamega, he said if he had a bullet, he would have that bullet in the head of the former head of Mumias. But you see, again, nothing is done. You pay off people and nothing is done. So, you know, but every man, woman and child in Kenya's got to change. We're all thieves. I was in Rwanda once and I was with two people and they'd left their phones on the table when they went in the hotel to go and get their food. I stood beside the table and I said, look guys, you know, you're leaving your phones on the table. Do you want to get them stolen? I said, oh, no, this is not Kenya. This is Rwanda. So, you know, we've got to change our national psyche. We've got to change it. Because if we don't, we're going to languish in poverty, and our children are going to do the same, and our grandchildren are going to do the same. You see it today. Now, you know, people, I asked, you know, I've mentioned this before to you, Debal. I mentioned to a lady, you know, Kenya's a really rich country, isn't it? And this is a consultant. Yeah, of course. I said, well, you know, I've never been to Lodwar, but in fact I have people who contribute to my free education fund. There's a lady who actually has been in Lodwar, and she said, look, the people there, if they were to come and live in Mathari Valley or Kibera, it would be like you and me going into the Hilton Hotel. So, you know, we've got to understand this has a knock-on effect to, as you mentioned, the whole of the population of Kenya. But we've all got to change. We've all got to understand that if you live in an honest society, things work better. There's a person in the United States who actually was originally from India, Dinesh D'Souza is his name, and he has a blog, and I sometimes listen to it because he's got sensible ideas. But he was talking about a person when he was in India. He had a friend who said, look, I hate India. He says, look, how can you say that? You're an Indian, I'm an Indian. How can you say you hate your country? He said, because, you know, if I want to do anything here, it takes me months. Whereas if you want to do that in the United States, it takes you minutes. In Rwanda, it takes you hours. But in Kenya, to do anything is a hassle. Why? Because everyone is on the make. Wanatoa kitu kidogo tu labda. And you know, and the point is, we don't understand. This is changing. This is making Kenya less competitive.
Okay, thank you. Let me just come to you, Bwana Sakwa, because I was just having coffee somewhere, and it happened to be one of your lecturers. And yeah, I'm given to understand also, Kemo, you actually in campus together.
Yes.
When you see him now, were you? Is that true? You in campus together?
Yeah, we were in high school together.
Oh, in high school together.
High school together, campus together.
Okay.
We've grown up together.
You've grown up together?
Yes.
So when you see him and this particular shadow of a cloud of, how was he then? And did he change along the way? Is he out of character?
You know, this is
I know this can be a very
tragedy.
yes.
It's a tragedy in many ways. I think in the first instance, when issues around this case came up, the question is, we talk about money actually being stolen, so these are going to be prosecuted, particularly when they moved very rapidly in Jersey and got the cases finalized. And then in Kenya, it sort of stayed on and on for various reasons. At the end of the day, I think it's a pretty sad affair, so to say, because you have got a guillotine hanging over your head and you don't know when it will strike, if it will. It affects how you act and so on. Honorable Okemo is a bright person. We were classmates. We are both economists. And he's, as an economist of repute in his ability to deal with issues, he's an above average person in these kinds of in these economic issues. Now, to have been caught on this, I think it's pretty unfortunate. But you can see that the magnitudes of monies of a case like this and others, this one at the time it was close to 1 billion shillings whenever that happened, 20 something years ago, and the 50% or thereabouts, 450 is supposed to be 50% of the amount that was seized. I think the UK seized the other half, and the second half is going to be returned to Kenya to be used in anti-poverty programs, so they say. But I wish it had gone into an anti-corruption lobby, and so that we get it funded and so on.
Yeah, because when you say the war of COVID-19, that is very amorphous. Yeah, we need to be very intent and particular. This type of money, where is it going? When we say, oh, this is going to be
that's going to be a back
COVID-19, we know COVID-19 with the COVID billionaires, that has not even been sorted out. Why will we even be taking this sum of money to that particular?
Yeah, I think it's unfortunate. When I heard that, I just said, oh, somebody must have duped somebody out there to say this will go into anti-COVID-19 programs. We haven't dealt with KEMSA.
Really, yes.
It is so fresh, it's almost so direct. And remember, this is 450. There was one contract in KEMSA of 4 billion where someone had got a contract in a few hours and so on. This is about 10% of that. Now you want to bring back some sort of amorphously defined thing. I think it's just putting it in and opening the rear door, and it goes right back into people's pocket. I think this should have gone, personally, I think it should have gone into the hands of an activist or civil society actions against corruption. Rather than fund it to continue to put the spotlight on issues of corruption and so on. It now almost seems like the only two corrupt individuals in this country are these ones involved in the Jersey case, and yet it really is it's so obvious. I think we are not looking good to ourselves, and it will impact us, we as a country, and how we act. So I really think that the Jersey case should be a lesson for us. You mentioned Chicken Gate, for example. While Chicken Gate was proceeding and people in the UK were getting jailed and so on, those in Kenya were walking scot-free.
Right.
They didn't even make statements.
Okay, let me just ask you before I come to Bill Okero, because we have all these presidential aspirants right now telling us, oh, we have this 10-point agenda, fighting corruption is one of them, we want to stanch the flow of corruption, last this particular boil, and it is just under the ambit of corruption. In no very particular way of how they're going to handle it. These are the cases we've had over the years, and nothing has really moved. Not moving this needle, even a jot at the end of the day. I want to ask you, cases like New Jersey, Okemo and Chris, why can't you be particular, especially now that you're in Kenya Kwanza? And I know Musalia Mudavadi is saying, oh, corruption in this country is big, also public debt is big at the end of the day. Can we be particular? We've had Raila Odinga, and you mentioned Rwanda, saying that we'll go the Rwandan way, in fighting corruption. Our ministers who have been embroiled in corruption will be in jail. We want to see that, and we want to hear that from the presidential aspirants telling us we have these pending cases all the way from Anglo leasing, the golden bag. These have never been sorted out. There's still money that we need in this country. There is KEMSA right now. These are the cases that tell us, I promise you, we'll close the KEMSA books. I promise you we'll close the Anglo leasing books. I promise you we'll close the golden bag. People will be taken to jail. And if we take Raila Odinga also on his word, to the hilt, he should make sure that this should be the way of fighting corruption. We want actionable, pointers, not just an amorphous ambiguity of, oh, we'll fight corruption in this country.
Thank you. I thought you were coming to me. Yes.
Yes, I'm coming to you because you're the politician in the house.
Let me talk as an analyst on this show. I do not think that we have the agenda yet in this year's election on issues of corruption, that we really have. That we are willing or even promising to tackle it. And this amorphousness, I think, is a way in which you buy time without specificity. So you can't then be pinned down to anything because there's nothing specific.
Yes.
I think that we could bolster the strength of the civil society that has been dealing with the issues of anti-corruption. We could pledge these presidential candidates and presidential campaigns, the big ones, could pledge zero tolerance and then say specifically what aspect of law would be changed to enable zero tolerance to begin to kick in, even if it kicked in effect initially in a chaotic way, but if you're headed there, that's where we should be going. And in so doing, we would then ensure that these old cases, and there are many, we're going to Anglo leasing and so on, which is going back about how many years, I guess, is that 20-something years only. But I have lived long enough in this country to remember things vividly that are 50 years, that were clearly very corrupt transactions, which have now been quietly sanitized. You know, people forget after a while. We don't read history, we don't write history, and so you don't get it to read. Ministers say history is a useless subject, so you keep it in the background, so you can't remember and you can't read. And we pile, so it's only the latest that looks like it's an offense. The earlier ones are sanitized, then they become the new billionaires and so on. And now we have got it entrenched with politics, tightly entrenched with politics. It's going to be a very difficult grip to break.
All right, Bill, okay, let's just come to you and we finalize on this, and we head over now to the banking sector and also them really reporting good profits at the end of the day. Your final remarks, especially with the politicians and the issue of corruption.
I think there are specific things that these leaders can pledge today, which does not require, some do not even require any fundamental changes to law. I'll give you an example. If you are running for president, you can say, in my government, if I get to power, anyone who has been implicated, not convicted, implicated in corruption, either through the media or through whatever, the criminal justice system, whatever, if you have been implicated, you will never serve in my government, and this is zero tolerance. This is my pledge, number one. Number two, you can say, I pledge that I will never appoint anyone into my government, and anyone who has been implicated will also be fired, whatever the circumstances, whether you have been convicted or not. If you have been implicated one way or the other, if there is any rumor of your involvement in any corruption, you will leave my government with immediate effect. I mean, there are things you can do. You can say, I take a pledge as a leader that me and my family will never be involved in any government contract whatsoever. We will never. If any member of my family, through directly or through proxies, are involved in any government contractual or relationship with government, then I should be held to account, and I will. You know, there are specific things, pledges that a leader can give in that regard, because this thing about corruption cannot be fought through legal system. Let me tell you alone. It requires political goodwill. It must be very clear up there that there's political will at the top. The moment people see, your government sees that you are a no-nonsense guy with regards to corruption, then I can assure you it will cascade down to everyone in your system. But if you let it go, you know, this is a politically, for political expediency, this person is my supporter and this one is my this or that, and you know, and you look the other way, nothing, we will waste our time. Whether you change the laws or, you know, whatever you do, these things require that political will which is lacking.
Thank you very much. All right, let's also dedicate some time to what is happening in the banking sector, as I've mentioned, and the financial, that is the release of financial results season continues. The top big